Imagine you're a king or a queen. You've got all the power in the world, but you live in constant fear. Not of some invading army, but of the very cup in your hand. Today, we're going to dive into the absolutely bizarre history of the unicorn horn, the ultimate, and yeah, completely mythical, poison antidote for some seriously paranoid royals.
So, let's just start with one of the most powerful people on the planet at the time, Queen Elizabeth I. She didn't just have a unicorn horn. Oh no, she drank from a cup made out of one because she was convinced that if a drop of poison touched it, the whole thing would explode. Now to us, that sounds kind of nuts, but in her world, this was life-saving technology.
And that really gets to the heart of it, right? Why were the smartest, most powerful people on Earth trusting their lives to the horn of a creature that doesn't even exist? Well, the answer has everything to do with the world they were living in. And that world was defined by one single silent threat that was everywhere. Think about it. In an age of scheming rivals and, let's be honest, backstabbing family members, poison was the perfect weapon. It didn't leave a mark, and it could be delivered by your most trusted advisor. In a time when nobody really knew what caused a sudden illness, paranoia wasn't just a personality quirk, it was a genuine survival strategy.
So, in a world absolutely terrified of an invisible death, a legendary solution pops up, promising total protection. It was called the Alicorn. That was the official name for a unicorn's horn. And it was seen as this physical manifestation of the unicorn's total purity and power. An object that was just buzzing with incredible magical energy. And the powers they believed it had? Oh, it was the whole shebang. It wasn't just an antidote for poison. People thought it could purify tainted water, cure everything from measles to the actual plague, and even give you a stronger heart. In an age of constant sickness, this thing was the ultimate cure-all. But of course, there's a catch. Unicorns aren't real. So where on earth were all these magical horns coming from? The truth is actually just as fascinating as the myth.
So that legendary Alicorn was actually the tusk of a narwhal. Yep, that incredible spiraled horn was really just a giant tooth from an Arctic whale that could grow up to 9 feet long. It was a total marvel of nature, just, mistaken for a miracle.
And this one mistake created a massive, centuries-long industry. It all started around the year 1000 with Viking traders. Then, in the Middle Ages, the unicorn became this powerful symbol for Christ, which made its horn a holy relic. And by the time the Renaissance rolled around, its reputation as a poison killer was locked in, and its price went through the roof, worth more than 10 times its weight in gold. And if you want to put a real number on it, this is how much Queen Elizabeth I paid for just one horn. In today's money, that's millions. We're talking the price of a small castle for a single whale tooth.
And believe me, she was not alone. This belief was everywhere among the elite. We're talking Pope Clement VII, Ivan the Terrible, King Philip II of Spain, who owned 12 of them. And get this, King Christian V of Denmark had a throne, an entire throne, built out of them. Can you even imagine?
Now, the Alicorn wasn't just some weird one-off belief. It was part of a much wider culture of, let's call it magical thinking, when it came to staying healthy and not getting poisoned.
I mean, the royal medicine cabinet was filled with some really bizarre stuff. You had bezoar stones, which are basically animal hairballs that they dip into their drinks. There were bones from a stag's heart, which were actually just hardened arteries. And my personal favorite, toadstones. They weren't magical gems from a toad's head. They were the fossilized teeth of prehistoric fish.
But here is the great, big, tragic irony in this entire story. While all these kings and queens were spending fortunes to guard against assassins, they were often poisoning themselves every single day.
They were terrified of a single drop of poison in their wine, but Queen Elizabeth I was caking her face in makeup that was loaded with lead. They worried about tainted food, but their own medicines contained mercury and arsenic. And one of the biggest killers of all? Just disease from polluted rivers. The real threats were hiding in plain sight the entire time.
So what was it? What finally broke the spell? How did this belief that lasted for centuries finally just crumble?
Well, the change really began with a pretty grim early attempt at a scientific experiment. Elizabeth's successor, King James I, he was a bit of a skeptic, so he decided to test his very expensive horn. He poisoned a servant and then gave him powdered alicorn as the antidote. Well, the servant died, and the king realized he'd been totally scammed. And that kind of skepticism just grew and grew into what we call the Enlightenment. Suddenly, magic and alchemy started giving way to chemistry and actual science. People like the French surgeon Ambroise Paré conducted test after test on these alicorns, and they systematically proved that, nope, they had no special powers against poison. The myth just couldn't stand up to real, repeatable evidence.
But here's one final cool little twist. A few of these ancient remedies kinda worked. There was a special clay called terra sigillata that could actually bind with arsenic. And those toadstones, the fossilized fish teeth, they contained calcium carbonate, which can neutralize certain types of poisons. So buried in all that superstition, there were these tiny glimmers of real science.
Which kind of leaves us with this one last thought. The unicorn horn was never really about the horn itself, was it? It was a symbol of purity, of power, of having some control over the invisible forces of death. And it just goes to show you that when we don't have hard evidence, and when we're afraid, a powerful enough symbol can shape the way an entire civilization thinks and acts. And it makes you wonder, what are our unicorn horns today?